Okay, so once again, my name is Enoch. I'm from Freedom 55 Financial. I'm a financial planner specializing with startups and entrepreneurs, having some experience in both the tech consulting sector and the finance sector. For today, we'll be covering the different benefits that's been offered by all levels of government. So over the past few months, there have been a number of announcements that have been made regarding resources and benefits for different categories of people. So what I've done is compiled a whole list of them and try to separate them into different categories that make sense. So the three categories I've put them into is the first one are for individuals and families. The second category is in regards to people facing unemployment and those people that are out of work. And the third category are for businesses. So without further ado, let's jump in. So I know that there's a lot on the screen here, so I'll try to break it up as easy as I can. The first three benefits are benefits that you don't have to apply for. They're automatically considered. So that's the Canada Child Benefit. So if you have children and you're currently receiving the Canada Child Benefit, you'll see a bump up per child by $300, and that'll be delivered in your May scheduled payments. With the GST credit payments, this is the same thing as well. You'll see a one-time special payment in May, and there's no need to apply. And the different amounts differ if you're single or considered a couple. Same thing also goes with the BC Climate Action Tax Credit, which is about $218 per adult and $64 per child. Recently, the government has also announced some support for children with special needs and people that are on income and disability assistance. So if you have children with special needs, there is a benefit that can be provided to you for eligible families that are considered more low income, and that will provide an extra $225 per month for 3 months, all the way up till June 30th. There's also an emergency relief fund that people can tap into if they so need it. If you're on income or disability assistance, you can actually also have an additional supplement on top of your different income assistance. So that's a $300 supplement that's also automatically added, so there's no action required. Interesting thing to note, you actually can also apply for the CERB and EI if you're on income assistance with certain expectations in there. So that's something that if you know people who are in that situation, I could encourage them to look into that. Last two things on this page is regarding RIFs, so Registered Retirement Income Funds. So if you know people who are currently withdrawing from it or having to, that right now there is a reduction by 25% for the minimal withdrawals. So this is something that us in the finance industry, we're actually pushing for to make it that there's no minimum withdrawals for the RIFs. But that's something that's still in works, and we'll get back to you once we have more information on that. There's also an emergency travel loan. So people are out of country and looking to get back home. There's a $5,000 loan available to them for the purpose of coming back to Canada. If I'm speaking too fast or if I'm going too quickly, just let me know and I can slow down or go over any points again. If nobody has anything to say on this section, I'm just going to go to the next. So this is a second page for support for individuals and families. Most of the sections on this page is to do with deferments. So the first one is on the personal tax filing deferment. The individual filing date has been deferred June 1st. And so what that means is that you can postpone filing your taxes until said date without incurring any interest or penalties. And so any income tax balances or installments that do pop up from now, you can defer them all the way up until September 1st, also without interest or penalties. A number of different companies are also offering payment deferrals. The three big ones being BC Hydro, ICBC, and Fortis BC. So if you look into the websites or call them individually, you can see what they are. But typically, most of them are offering some type of payment deferral, while some are actually offering a credit. Mortgage payments I'm sure you guys are very familiar with, are also being deferred for up to 6 months based on each person's financial institutions. So that's a really big one if you have potential clients or people that you're working with that are having difficulties with their mortgages, then this is a really important one that they can tap into. One thing to note is that it's deferred, not forgiven. So what's happening is that all of the different months that are being deferred are added to the principal. So this becomes a question of balance, saying, are you in a cash flow starved situation? Do you need the money now? If yes, then this would be something to go for. If not, then it might be worth considering not to go through it because you'll be paying more interest in the long term. So just one quick consideration here. The last program here is on the BC temporary, sorry, let me just move my screen here. BC temporary rental supplement, which will provide $500 per month directly to the landlord. And so I'll actually break this down in a little further detail for what this means. So this is a big one that's recently got announced, and that it's the ability for people who are renting and are facing difficulties with payments for them to have a reduction in their pay. And so what it works, it's a two-step process. So the tenants will start the application, which you can find through BC Housing website, and it'll require the landlords to complete the application. And so the eligibility I've listed here, I'll also include some links later on that you can go for, so you can actually see it for yourself. This is something to note in that currently one of the issues that's happening with this is that people who are renting, sometimes they find out that they're actually renting a suite that's unlisted or illegal. And so their landlord has actually done things under the table. So what do you do in that case? In this case, what CRA is saying is that they won't check or audit for people like that. They can still go through the process. But to be honest, it's a really smart thing where the CRA can then now start to crack down on people who have been illegally renting out suites. So this is something that's a little bit of a sticky situation for most, but for tenants, it's a safety feature for them. So typically for them, we recommend them starting the application if they qualify for it. Are there any questions on the BC-TRS at this point? Okay, if not, I will move on. Recently, there's been a few announcements for students as well. The two big ones being the Canadian Emergency Student Benefit, CESB, and the Canada Student Service Grant, CESG. So if you have children who are currently studying in post-secondary school, or nieces and nephews, or know, for example, your clients' families that are in school, then this could be an important thing to look into. So this is basically the student equivalent to the CERB, the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit. So for students who, let's say, can't find a job, maybe just graduated and are in a sticky situation, then this will provide up to $1,250 towards them for the time being. Or if they're taking care of someone else, or they currently have a disability, it gets bumped up to $1,750. As of yesterday, there was a House of Commons meeting. They're considering raising that amount to $2,000 for people who have disabilities or taking care of somebody in response to, for example, single mothers or single fathers that are currently taking care of kids, don't qualify for their CERB. This will match a CERB for people. Canada Student Service Grant is a benefit given to students that actually volunteer during this time. So this could be a really great way to help reduce tuition costs coming up, as well as give them the opportunity to be working or to get that volunteer experience. Note that both these programs have yet to be passed. In this Saturday, that they will then walk through it. So if things go well, this will be passed by next week. The final things to say on this piece is that student loan payments have been postponed and halted until September 30th. So this is also done automatically. So if people have student loans outstanding, you'll start to notice that you have a reduction in the different student amounts that you have to pay. Final pieces, is that the summer jobs program has been expanded, and there is a number of different student grants that have been increased for students of all levels. All right, so that's the piece on students. The second category is for, oh, sorry, I see a chat message. Sorry, can you hear me now? Testing, 1, 2. Check, mic check. Okay, thank you. Yep. Yeah, so if you can't hear me again, just drop me a message and then I'll wait for a pause. Thanks, guys. So a second category we have here is for people that are out of work or facing unemployment. Okay, that's good to know. I'll try speaking slowly. If it continues to cut out, let me know and I'll see if it's a connection issue. Okay. Is the sound still cutting out right now? Okay, thanks. Thanks, Jackie. So the big two supports right now are the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit, CERB, and the BC Emergency Benefit for Workers. So I'll speak a little bit more on the Canada Emergency Response Benefit in just a bit. And I'm quickly going to focus on the BC Emergency Benefit for Workers. So this is a one-time $1,000 payment for people who are affected work-wise and income-wise because of COVID-19. Currently, to qualify for it, you would actually have to qualify and be approved for the CERB. So this works in tandem with the CERB. Applications open up on May 1st, so tomorrow. So if you go onto the BC government website, you can look for more details there, as well as instructions on how to apply for it. My recommendation is that if you do qualify for the CERB, to have that approved and qualified, and then apply for the BC emergency benefit. So the Canadian Emergency Response Benefits. I know there have been a number of questions that's been asked from both the audience and from other people, so I'll do my best to address some of them as well. So what is a CERB? Well, it's a $2,000 monthly taxable benefit. That's being able in weeks. And currently these are provided in different periods. So the periods range from March 15th all the way to October 3rd. And you can apply for all 4 of the periods, but applying for one period does not mean you're guaranteed for the next. So you'd have to reapply for every period. If you look on the website, it'll give you a list of all the different things that you're eligible for. I know I've had a bunch of questions about the income qualification. So to be clear, the $5,000 of income can be either in the year of 2019 or in the 12 months prior to your date of application. The question has been asked, is this gross or net income? From my understanding, this is gross income. So when you apply for the first time, the interesting part is that they have 14 or more consecutive days within that 4-week period where you've either earned no more than $1,000 or have been working nothing at all. So what that means is that you could be making your regular amounts and then all of a sudden, boom, your income decreases, you can still qualify. For any subsequent claims though, you have to make sure that you're earning no more than $1,000 in that whole period, or else that would disqualify you for that period. So there's a number of ways that you can apply for. So the first question to ask is, do you qualify for EI? So for those that have qualified for EI as of March 15th, all applications that go through gets transferred into the CERB and is automatically considered for that. So the difference between through is that you don't have to reapply every period. Oh, I see a chat message. Oh, thanks, Jackie. So a period is 4 weeks. So the first period would have been March 15th to April 11th. The second period is April 12th to May 9th, and so on and so forth for 4-week periods. So when you say that you can apply for a maximum of 4 periods, it doesn't have to be consecutive. It can be staggered depending on your income qualifications. So this is just something to note. Hopefully that answers the question. So back to your EI process. The pros of applying through EI is that you don't have to reapply every period in order to requalify for the CERB. As well, after your CERB has been exhausted, you can use your hours to switch towards the EI benefits. And so it avoids some of the headaches of having to apply for multiple services here. The thing that you do have to do is standard reporting process. And I'm quickly just going to check the chat real quick. Okay, so I'll answer your question of a double payment in just a bit. If you're currently receiving EI benefits, you won't qualify for the CERB right now, and so you'll continue receiving your EI benefits until they end. If they end before October 3rd, then you do have the option to apply for the CERB once that period runs out for your EI. But for everybody else, the best way to apply is through your account on CRA, so my account. And if you go through the online process and you set up direct deposit, you can actually get your payments deposited within the next few days, business days. So that's my personal recommendation. Back to the question that Jackie had about double payments or irregular payments. If you're in a situation that you've applied for both EI and CERB, there might be a chance you've gotten a double payment. If you suspected that you have a double payment, my recommendation is that you hold on to it just in case the government tries to claw back that amount. If you have a double payment, let's say 2,000 and 2,000, it could be that when you applied for it, it automatically considered you for the next period. I have heard of that happening. The best way to check it's to call in to see what they have on file or to try to check your CRA records. It is a little bit annoying because wait lines for CRA are quite long. But if you do have any concerns, the best thing to do is just to hold off on it if you're not in a dire need to use it. One quick note as well is that all these benefits are taxable benefits. And so for yourself, it could be wise to set a certain amount to pay for taxes at the year end, depending on what tax bracket you'll be in. So for example, setting aside 20% at least in order to pay for the tax when you do your tax filings. If there's any more questions on the CERB, just feel free to send it in chat and I can always come back to this part. There is a number of different support for businesses that have been announced. I've kind of chosen the top 7 that might apply. I won't go in depth on all of them, but I'll try to go in depth on the ones that might matter for you. I know that one of the questions was asked, if you don't qualify for the CERB, what other benefits and resources can you qualify for? So I'll try to point you into the right direction for some of them, but they're, depending on your situation, you might be able to apply for all of them or none at all. So I'll get started on the first one. The Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy Program. So this program application started last Monday, and this is something that was been discussed over the past month. What is it? Well, it's a wage subsidy to different employers that have seen a drop in income. The purpose of it is for businesses and companies to either retain their employees or to rehire them and to help give them a supplement in this pandemic and in this reduction of income. So how it works is that it will provide up to $847 per week per employee for the first $5,800 or $58,700. The application process is through your CRA business account online. So if you haven't set up a CRA list, that would be my first recommendation, is to get that set up, to have direct deposit ready to go, to make it easy to access and to apply. So currently there's 3 periods that people can qualify for and apply for. The months of March to April, April to May, and May to 1st. And so the income, or sorry, the drop in revenue eligibility is as follows. In the first period, if you have at least a 15% drop in revenue. In the second and third period, it's a 30% drop in revenue. And the next page, I'll be showing you how that revenue reduction is measured. And there's 2 ways you can do so. In terms of different eligible employees that can qualify for the wage subsidy, a few things here. One is that they have to be employed by the company in Canada, and also has to have received remuneration for 14 more consecutive days in that period. Employees that have been laid off or weren't paid during that time can also be eligible retroactively, as long as there's payment resent to them as according to the different qualifications here. Currently, there's 2 benchmarks that are being used for the revenue calculations. The first one is a year-over-year approach. So let's say you take the applicable month, let's say March, and you compare it to the previous year's March. And if there's a drop of that 15% or 30% in the applicable period, then you qualify. Certain companies, let's say startup companies or companies that are in growth stage, that doesn't make sense for them because they've been growing. So the second option you can do is to take an average of January and February and compare it to the applicable periods that you're in. Once you choose one of the different approaches, you have to stick with it for all subsequent applications. An interesting note is that if you do qualify for one claim period, you'll automatically qualify for the next. So I'll give you an example here. So say you have Hakuna Matata is a small business. So reported revenues of 100,000 in January and 140K in February. So when you average it out, it's 120,000. Now it's March and they've seen a drop in revenue of 90,000. So when you look at the percentage of a drop compared to the average in January and February, that construes a 25% drop in revenue. So Hakuna Matata Incorporated is eligible for the first period and also the second period because they're automatically considered, even though they are lower than the 30% qualification. For them to be qualified for the third period, they'd have to actually qualify for the 30% drop, which means $84,000 or less. So that's a typo here. It should say 30,000 or 30%, not 0%. Any questions so far on this part? All right, no questions, then we can move on. The temporary wage subsidy program. So this works in tandem with the previous mentioned 75% subsidy. So the 10% subsidy program is not actually a benefit or payment, it's a deduction. So if you're paying regular payroll tax remittance to CRA, what you do is you would keep that 10% from the remittance you would have to pay for CRA, and you would just not send that in. So it gives you just a little more extra cash flow. The downside is that the 10% of the wage subsidy reduces the 75% wage subsidy that you would get with the other program. So they work side by side. If you happen to not qualify, for example, for the 75% subsidy, you could still apply for the 10% subsidy. So this is here as an additional option for you. So this is something that might be interesting to many people, the Canada Emergency Business Account. So what is it? Well, it's an interest-free loan for up to $40,000 for small businesses and not-for-profits. So in this case, they've loosened the qualifications in the past few weeks so that your payroll in 2019 can be between $20,000 to $1.5 million. So in this case, you are required to submit your 2019 T4 summary gross payroll. Now, a perk to have in this, it's not only do you have the next 3 years or 2 years in terms of interest-free loans, but there's also ability to have a loan forgiveness of up to 25% if you repay that loan balance before January or December 31st of 2022. So this could be a great thing if you're in need of cash flow, as well as to get that extra 25% down the road. So you would contact your financial institution to apply for said loans. So this is one thing that could apply to you, especially if you're incorporated and you're paying payroll to yourselves or to other people underneath you. So just something to consider. Okay, I've got one question online. Okay, so the question is that available to incorporated agents? How does that work with the requirement to not pay executive bonuses to the owners? In regards to the loan, so truth be told, I'm not too familiar with the business account loans and the eligibility for that. So I would recommend you look into what it's used for. To my understanding, as long as you have your payrolls on account and you have your incorporation, you could qualify for it. So typically this is where I would usually work with some accountants to figure out the payroll structures and to figure out the more nitty-gritty parts of that. So for some of my different clients, I've been working with a few different CPAs to calculate and to look into the qualifications for that. So sorry, I can't answer too much of that, but I'd encourage you to look into the business loan itself from the different institutions, or to talk to a CPA that can help guide you into that. But thank you for the question. So this section is on the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program. So this is something that was also recently announced, and applications will be beginning in mid-May. So what does this work for? Well, this is to help with commercial tenants. So for example, if you're currently renting space, or let's say you have clients or have people you know who are running businesses and are renting out, this could help them. So what does this work for? Well, it's a rent forgiveness agreement between 3 parties: the landlord, the tenant, and the government. So each party, so the landlord and the tenant, will each cover 25% of the rent, and the federal and provincial government will cover the rest, which is the 50%. And what they do is the federal and provincial governments will offer this as a forgivable loan to the landlord. So if a landlord were to keep the covenant and keep the agreement, then the landlord will keep the agreements to the government, then the government will forgive that 50%. The eligibility for it is that the tenant is paying less than $50,000 per month in rent. And for the business to also have either temporary ceased operations or experienced a 70% drop in pre-COVID-19 revenue. Okay, any questions on this before I move on? Okay, moving on. So we're near the end of all the different benefits here. So one of the last sections is on the different tax changes and deferrals. So there's a few other different tax changes that I have not mentioned here. I've just listed the main ones. So the first one being tax payment referrals for businesses. So if you do owe any federal income tax amounts or installments, you're able to defer them until August 31st without interest or penalties accumulated during that period. GST and HST payments and remittances are also being able to be deferred until the end of June 2020. So for this one, it applies to any amounts between March 27th and June 2020. One thing to note is that the corporate tax filing due date has not been deferred, so that is unchanged. So you still do your usual tax filing of the usual 6 months within fiscal year end. And that's it. That was basically just a quick overview of some of the different moving pieces that are part of the different governmental benefits. Note that the government is doing daily and weekly announcements, so some of this might change as we go forward. But what I tried to do is to do a comprehensive overview of what are some of the things being offered right now, as well as some of the different things that are being considered for the future. And at this point, I will open up for any questions and comments.
Thanks, Enoch. That was really great. It doesn't look like there's any questions right now, but if people have questions, should they just email you at your email on the screen?
Yes, you can just email me on the screen or drop me a message on LinkedIn, and I'll pass over to Brooke some of the resources here so you can view it on your own time.
I have one question, right?
Yep.
Okay, regarding CRB, what if you get commission check now, like the deal you done it like in January or February? Like for me, do I still qualify for the second CRB check or no?
Yeah, so that is still being talked about. So I've been working with a few CPAs on that, and they haven't been really clear on how that works. One approach is to put it retroactively, as in saying that, hey, this amount was made in previous months, so it doesn't apply to the current period. So that could be one way to approach it. The second approach is to say, okay, if I'm applying in this period and I've gotten my commission check at this point, then if you can still have the 14 days of non-payment, you can still qualify for the first period. So depending on if it's your first time applying, you could play the safe game, which is saying if you can qualify for the 15 days in between. For example, let's say you got your check in, let's say mid-April, April 15th. And so you're applying for that period of April 12th to May 9th. You could actually still qualify for that if you had the 15 days of non-payment, even if your commission check was over the $1,000.
Oh, I see, okay.
Yeah, so if it's the first period, you have a little bit more leeway. If it's, let's say, if your commission check is near the end of that period, that's where it's a little bit more tricky. So
yeah, mine was in April, I would say 18 or 19. So do you think do I still qualify for that? For the second?
So if there's a 14-day period in between, then yes, definitely you can qualify. If your commission check was $1,000 or underneath, you would qualify. If it's not those two situations, then definitely I would say check in with a CPA or somebody to see if you could in terms of the structure for it. So I will get back to you on that one. I'm still waiting on some of the different accountants to get back to me on this one.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, but thank you for the question.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah. So to Jackie's question, yes, I'll send this PowerPoint to Brooke, and then Brooke can distribute it to all of you.